The Ways and Means Committee Subcommittee will now come to order the meeting of April 23rd, 2018. Before we get started, could we all please rise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you mind calling the roll of the Ways and Means Committee Subcommittee, please?
Roll call of the Ways and Means Subcommittee. Councilor Guanasso? Here. Here. Councilor Morbido is absent. Councilor Patch?
Here.
Here. Councilor Rotundo? Absent. And Chairman Rizzo?
Here.
Here.
I would also like to welcome members of the City Council, not of this subcommittee, but who took time out to be with us here today. City Council President Jessica Giannino and Ward 5 City Councilor John Powers. Thank you for joining us. We've got 5 items on the agenda here today, and I'll take them in order as we have them on the agenda. The first one is a motion by Councilor George Rotundo, 18-047. It was a motion by Councilor Rotundo that the City of Revere look into the feasibility of building a new Revere High School in the Coolidge Street projects while simultaneously building apartment-style housing for current and future residents. Councilor Rotundo is not here to speak on that, but before I call on the city councilors that are here, I'm wondering if the council would mind if I welcome to the podium the Executive Director of the Revere Housing Authority, James Milanazzo, who has already addressed this with his board. Are there any objections to hearing from Director Milanazzo? Director Milanazzo, would you mind coming to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and tell us a little bit about your response to the motion that was submitted by Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. And good afternoon, members of the subcommittee and esteemed members of the Revere City Council. My name is Jim Milanazzo. My home address is 9 Trull Lane East in Lowell, Massachusetts, but as the chairman indicated, I'm the executive director of the Revere Housing Authority. This afternoon, I'm joined by our vice chairman, Anthony Peroni, our treasurer, Henry Mancini, and our board member, Francis Riga, who are here obviously because of the interest in this motion. I know that Chairman Anzoni, George Anzoni, had another commitment, but he may actually be here at some point during the proceedings. But we actually did review the motion, and we actually discussed it at our board meeting on Wednesday evening, and there was a motion by Commissioner Peroni, seconded by Councilor Riga, to actually object to the motion as it's written. It turns out, as you all know, the Coolidge Street projects, we have 28 acres there. We have 77 buildings. We have 286 family units. They're all 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. And to think about placing a high school there is really an ominous task. Those of you that have worked with the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the past know how detailed and precise their guidelines are, and they don't pay for the taking of property or even the negotiations of taking a property. We're building probably either the largest or the second largest public high school up in Lowell at a cost of $365 million. It's 600,000 square feet, and we're taking one piece of property, and it's on the taxpayers in the city of Lowell. So when I actually ran this motion by Department of Housing and Community Development, because this is a state-aided development. 286 units are state-aided. There's 49 units that are federally aided within that same neighborhood, and those are 2 and 3 bedroom units, federally aided. I didn't reach out to the Department of Housing and Urban Development because I think the intent of Councilor Rotundo's motion was to look at the Coolidge Street, Cushman Avenue area. The DHCD put a price tag of $115 million if we were to go forward to the cost of the city of Revere to do this, $115 million, outside of building the school, whatever the proposed school construction cost would be. In addition, we'd have to do a one-for-one replacement. So out of the 286 units, if in fact this came to pass, we would have to relocate 286 families. And the motion implies that they would look for us to build apartment-style housing. But again, with respect, I would remind you that this is all family housing. And apartment-style housing, be it high-rises, if you look to New York or to Boston or to Cambridge or to Chicago, the family-style apartment-style housing has been done away with. People that live in public housing, and we're doing all types of programs to get them up and out, to find them work and so forth, but they do deserve to have a yard, again, for a place for their kids to play. They shouldn't be in an apartment complex. They shouldn't be in that type of environment. So again, we'd like to go on record as against the motion, and we'll certainly continue to obviously work with the City of Revere. We have a very good working relationship across the departments here in the City of Revere because we want to be a good neighbor, but at the same time, our first priority as commissioners and as staff is to make sure that we preserve the housing that we do have. Again, I know that you all have worked to look at affordable housing in Revere, and we stand ready. We just formed a new nonprofit housing corporation that both Commissioner Peroni and the chairman are on, along with myself, and we'll be happy to sit with members of the planning office and others to continue to look at housing, workforce housing for the city of Revere. But again, I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman. Again, we want to go on record as opposed to this motion as presented.
Thank you very much, Director Milazzo.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Members of the committee, would anybody like to speak first? Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being that I'm the ward councilor for that area and very familiar with the style of living that's conducted there, this certainly, the motion, and probably was well intended, but it's really thinking outside of the box and the wildest imagination. In talking to some of the neighbors who reside there, this would absolutely discourage them from any further living within the area. This is not a doable project. I think that it would be taking all these properties, and as the director of the housing has just spoke very adequately, that this is the type of housing that they want to get away from in public housing, and they want to put people back in a familiar setting within a community. And certainly high-rises is not what they really want. So I just can't tell you how much I'd be opposed to this. It goes beyond words as to explain why. I mean, in my imagination, I could never even think of having such a development within the area. And it wouldn't be productive for our community to have such a plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councilor Guanasso that I don't even know. I got to apologize for you people have to be in here tonight because I didn't realize. I thought it was tabled. Or at least they should have sent it to the city solicitor for a ruling because it's, as we know, it's federal land. It's not even. It's not even state land. But I do have a question for the, as far as you know, and when I grew up, when those back in the 50s, they were all World War II veterans that lived in that complex. It was built for them.
Correct.
And then for some reason, through the years, it got away from going to veterans. Can you tell me what the current policy is?
I would say the current policy is through the leadership of the Board of Commissioners. We've met with the Speaker, and we have been trying to get the state housing guidelines changed so that instead of veterans getting a preference, which they now get, they would get a priority. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful as of yet. We're working through our trade association, Mass Narrow, National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, to try to make veterans a priority. We have been successful in getting what they call HUD Veterans Assisted Supportive Housing vouchers, so we now have some of those vouchers, and we're working with the Bedford VA Clinic, along with 5 other housing authorities to house our veterans, because we want to make sure that our veterans, especially our homeless veterans, get priority. Right now, if I took 286 units and told you how many, I'd be guessing. I could certainly get you that information, but I would say it's probably a dozen, maybe 20 who are veterans living in the Chapter 200 development. And you're absolutely correct. It was built for returning veterans. There's actually how do I want to put this? There's actually a group that meets annually, and they actually that had lived there and brought their families up, and they get together and they really talk about what it was like when it first opened in the 50s and to grow up there. And we're trying to bring pride back to the neighborhood. My board has told me, to deal with getting supportive housing programs, to deal with getting it clean. We have our maintenance staff who does a very good job in making sure that these buildings are updated. We get about $1 million a year from the Department of Housing and Community Development to actually renovate and make those units livable. But again, the Board of Commissioners are very concerned about making sure that we have a priority for our veterans.
So you think that it would be we would do any good if we sent a letter as a council?
I think it would be very helpful. In fact, we've got a meeting with the Speaker on Monday, this coming Monday, April 30th. In fact, Commissioner Perrone and I are going down with Chairman Anzoni to meet with the Speaker at 11:30 to talk about this and other issues on Monday.
Well, I believe all my colleagues would be with me 100% with this, to give them the priority. And maybe, Madam Clerk, we could get a letter sent to the Speaker, stating such that we want to give priority to veterans.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Councilor. And, obviously, I know myself as chair, and I venture to say my colleagues here all support that. But I would like to ask my colleagues to stick to the motion right here, which just talks about building a school and taking the property. Thank you, Councilor, for bringing that. No, that was a very valid point, and I'm glad you brought it up. But just because we have 4 or 5 more items to talk about, I want to stick to what the motion is. So I'd like to welcome a couple of new councilors who just joined us, member of the committee, Councilor Stephen Morabito, and City Councilor Ira Novoselsky from Ward 2. Before I call on Councilor Powers, I want to call on Councilor Morabito, who is a member of the subcommittee. Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I just want to thank you for being here today, taking the time. I had a wake to go to, but the chairman briefed me on what has gone on with the board commission. I agree that we wouldn't want to see people displaced, as well as I don't think the amount of land that's there, the acreage, is enough for a high school, especially with what we're trying to attain as a school system and to meet the requirements. Just the size isn't suitable for the needs we need for a building. And that's about it.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Appreciate that. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would be very much opposed to this. I think it's the wrong avenue to go down. I think that the cost of working this out would be enormous, more than we should have to spend to acquire a piece of land. I do think that this city council and the mayor and the school department really have to start looking now. I mean, we were a city that's 6 square miles, so, it's not like you're in California or Maine or something like that. We know what land is available. We know what we'd like to keep for commercial, if possible. But I think the time now, because this is so important to the youth of this city, to make sure that they have a high school that's accredited, and a high school that's going to work for the next half a century at least. I don't know where that's going. I don't have the slightest idea, but I think we all have to sit down collectively and look at every opportunity and weigh the numbers. It may very well have to be a piece of commercial property, I don't know. But sometimes, waiting to do this, and the construction costs keep escalating, and you look at a piece of commercial property and you say, well, that's commercial property, we want to keep it because of the numbers. Maybe we have to do something in that direction, and I wouldn't want to do it, but, maybe we have to because of the long-range costs that we could wind up spending here in bonding for a high school. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Any other councilors wishing to be heard? Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thank you, gentlemen, for coming up. We know we all need a new high school, like everybody has said. But I can't see putting all these folks out of homes while we do it. And now we have to start finding places for them. And I know the Housing Authority has a lot of units, but they won't have that many to fill all those slots that they're going to be displacing. So, we have to look at that. Then we're putting a burden on the Housing Authority to seek funds to build other buildings besides us paying for a new high school. So it really puts a lot of people at a disadvantage, and, I don't think this will work. I know, like Councilor Powers said, we have to look around, see what we want to do and what kind of moves we want to make. It's a chess game, and we all know it. Over the years, we've lost a lot of properties and fields and public playgrounds for schools. And, we've tried to put some back, but it's not equal to what we've lost. And I think that would be the same thing that we run into with the homes and putting the Housing Authority out of the way and taking their properties for them. But I know it's a federal issue too, and a state issue, and I think we have to be careful how we move. So I would be against this if it ever came to the floor, and if the body comes to a negative recommendation not to vote on this, I would definitely go with that vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Any other councilors? Hearing and seeing none. Just listening to, displacing 286 families, $115 million land acquisition costs. We've got well over 7,000 kids in the school system right now, over 2,000 at the high school alone, and that number is growing. We're looking at least at $150 to $200 million to build a new high school. You had mentioned $365 million up in Lowell, and while Lowell obviously is a bigger city than Revere, I mean, there is a real serious cost involving building new schools today, especially a new high school. So we're going to have to figure that out. Adding $115 million for starters is not a good way to start. So, I'd like to offer a motion to place this on file. I want to say before I do that I believe Councilor Rotundo's intentions were good. He's thinking about what we have to do, the inevitable at some point, but maybe this is not the right way to go after hearing from the director and from the board who was here in support. So I'd like to offer a motion, and if you could, Madam Clerk, call the roll to place this on file.
Roll call of the Ways and Means Subcommittee to place motion 18-047 on file. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo is absent. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, the motion will be placed on file.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you. Next item on the agenda was a motion, a motion by Councilor Morabito, 18-061, pertaining to a Veterans Tax Abatement Program. Councilor Morabito, I'll defer to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought this to light because a veteran had came up to me, was not eligible for a tax exempt because he wasn't in the service connection program, or he wasn't defined by any clauses in 22 to 22F of the local property tax exemptions for veterans. if we as a council adopt Section 5N, what this allows a veteran to get a tax exemption in addition to one of those exemptions, not exceeding $1,000. So in addition or alone, a veteran will be able to get an exemption for $1,000 on a home property tax, depending on if they're defined as a veteran. And the definition of a veteran is defined by law. I provided you guys with all the information. This is also, it just doesn't give the veteran a $1,000 tax exemption. They have to work, they basically have to provide services to the city. It's similar to the work abatement that we currently have in the summer for the senior citizens. This will allow veterans to work, being that they provide services in the summer, whether they help with maintenance of the grounds along City Hall. And let's keep this in mind. This is not to be used to take the place of people who are employed by the city. This is in addition to. And I believe the reason this is before the Ways and Means Committee is there were some questions of whether this would be, if we were able to financially support this program. So I believe this is why it's before the Ways and Means Committee. But looking at our financial condition, the mayor came before us not too long ago saying that we had great financial standing. So I think there's a way that his administration can work this into our city. The veterans are the reason why we have the freedoms we have today. Why shouldn't they be eligible for a work credit? Why not? And that's my argument.
Thank you very much, Councilor Morabito. Any members of the committee wishing to be heard? Councilor Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to know if I can vote on this, being a disabled veteran. Can I vote on this?
Well, the definition of veteran wouldn't just be disabled. It would be any type of veteran,
So that
and
covers you, too.
Yeah. But I don't think that,
It wouldn't be directly affecting you. You would have to actually sign up for the program and work.
Right.
So it wouldn't affect you financially.
right. Okay. Any other councilors wishing to be heard? Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quite a couple questions I have. Is this $1,000 a work-off type thing for your tax rate, or is it $1,000 off the assessment of your property? And that's why I would like to have seen a veterans person here today.
Point of clarification, like, it is $1,000 off of their real property tax bill.
The tax bill,
Yes.
okay. But I would like to have heard from
I
Mark
totally
Silvestri,
agree.
So
I
I don't know
agree.
if he was invited to attend tonight, but.
We had asked all pertinent parties to appear, so.
Being in, in that tax bracket, I would, I wouldn't do anything to hurt anybody, but I just want to make sure we're on the right standing and everybody understands what's going on.
So, can I give a point of information? So right here, I provided I submitted an email to the city clerk, and she provided all the information, so everyone would have sufficient information in front of them. Not only that, this was brought before the council about 2 months ago, so that's sufficient time for everyone to do their research, and I appreciate everyone who took the time to do their research. It says right here that the total amount by which the real property tax has been reduced, okay, so it will be the real property, the tax, the reduction on real property tax.
Real property, exactly.
Yeah, so the whole amount, gross.
Councilor Guanasso, thank you for clarification.
I think Councilor Morabito is correct in reviewing the guide. But this is, again, another example of how city government can work on behalf of those that we all give praise and sing praise to a few times a year, Veterans Day, Memorial Day. We sing these words of praise to these men and women who service our country and make certain that we preserve liberty for freedom for all of us. This is a very minor opportunity to help them. I think it's a great opportunity to assist in some people. There are many veterans out there, unfortunately, that don't have the financial means that we all think they have. And if this is a little bit of an opportunity to help our vets, then why not? You know, and I think our city has been stated before very clearly that we are in thank God we are, in a very financial order that we can afford this type of activity. And so let's afford our veterans the opportunity to gain a little bit from it too. So I think this is a great motion by Councilor Morabito. I think that the research he's done and attributed to the effort behind this is very clear and deliberate. He's shown everything that we could possibly review to make a determination on it. So I would be voting favorably for this deduction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilor Guanasso. Any other councilors wishing to be heard? Just for the edification of the members of the council, you know, I do wish myself that the Veterans Affairs Director was here, because I would like to know just how many veterans that this could impact. I mean, that's the purpose of our committee, is to figure out how much money is potentially at stake here and how much, you know, can be spent. But, you know, fundamentally, helping a veteran who served our country, I couldn't agree more. And as a member of the military myself, I know Councilor Patch also, and Councilor Novoselsky, you know, we obviously can appreciate, you know, the service that that these veterans have made. I just want to say the definition of a veteran under Mass General Laws, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 43, shall mean any person whose last discharge or release from his wartime service, as defined herein, was under honorable conditions and who served in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, or Air Force of the United States, or in full-time National Guard duty under Titles 10 or 32 of the United States Code and under Sections 38, 40, and 41 of Chapter 33 for not less of 90 days of active service, or at least 1 day of which was for wartime service. A wartime service shall mean service performed by a Spanish War veteran, a World War I veteran, a World War II veteran, a Korean veteran, a Vietnam veteran, a Lebanese Peacekeeping Force veteran, a Grenada Rescue Mission veteran, a Panamanian Intervention Force veteran, or a Persian Gulf veteran. So this covers obviously a wide variety of veterans that we could potentially have living here in the city of Revere. And, you know, again, while we don't have the exact numbers, I think when you're talking about $1,000 abatement, you know, pick a number of how many veterans might be out there. I can't imagine that you know, that the number of people who would want to perform those number of hours of service to go up to the $1,000 limit would be something that the city would struggle with. So I, on its face, would support this without having exact numbers, which is, Madam Clerk?
This program is just like that of the senior citizen work-off abatement, and I imagine there would be some sort of lottery set up. When I was doing research for Councilor Morabito on the motion, many communities have this under the same ordinance. It's the Senior Citizen and Veterans Work-Off Abatement Program, and they conduct a lottery.
So they would cap the number.
Yep. So even though
is
there
that
could be
something we
1,000
should be doing here in committee? Should we cap a number?
Well, an ordinance
and
would
then
be,
vote on
would
that?
need to be created, a program.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is just adopting this, and from here we would go into creating an ordinance, correct? Okay, so by adopting Section 5N, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
Just on a clarification on the definition of a veteran. I know the Mass General Laws has there, but when President Obama was in office, he enacted that anybody that retired from the service, a reservist, National Guard, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, said if you're retired after 20 years in not being in combat or active duty, you are declared to be a veteran. So I would want to make sure that's clarified, and if it inclusive of the Mass General laws. I'd like to have that added to the ordinance.
Okay, I will
If I can just speak. So we cannot make an amendment to the definition of a veteran. The definition of a veteran is defined by Massachusetts general law. So by adopting this, we have to adopt the wording of Massachusetts general law of veteran.
If I may, Mr. President, also too, this is a federal regulation, and I think the feds don't override it, but could add to a state Mass General law. So I don't want the state law to override the federal law and putting us in jeopardy and taking care of those veterans that have to be taken care of.
Councilor Novoselsky, I totally understand what you're saying. I think what we should do, though, is vote on adopting the Section 5N, and then maybe send it to the city solicitor for clarification when the ordinance is drafted. At that point, we can define, you know, what a veteran is, if that's fair enough with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Council Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got another quick question. There's abatements being given to disabled veterans. If there's going to be a lottery, are they going to be included in the lottery, or are they going to just keep their the abatement they're getting now?
I would imagine that's going to have to be considered in the ordinance, and we can tweak the ordinance as it comes along. That would be my opinion right now, because right now we're just talking about the adoption of Section 5N. We can always address that when the time comes, once the ordinance is drafted for us to vote on. We can look at that, and then at that point make any changes that we want to make that might need to be made, you know, or we can offer input at that point before voting on an ordinance.
Also, Mr. Chairman, point of information, if you'll allow me to speak for a minute. Also, there are other exemptions amounts, as I'm sure you're aware of, that people who are disabled are already capable of getting without doing the work for the city. So say, for instance, if some veterans with a service-connected disability, there's a clause that they can earn up to, already they can get a $400 exemption. If they're capable of, say, for instance, working or providing some kind of service to the city, say even if it's clerical or maybe even helping out the city clerk's office, if there's something they can do, they can exceed that $400 and get up to $1,000. So I'm sure there are services that they they whether they're disabled physically, mentally, somehow they would be able to get the exemption defined in the law.
If I may, to you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Morbido.
Councilor Patch.
Stephen, I want to thank you for all the hard work you put in for the veterans here in your research and the bringing this motion forward. You did a great job. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Councilor Novoselsky, Councilor Rizzo, and yourself for serving our country and making it safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Morbido. Madam Clerk, on the adoption of Councilor Morbido's motion, Section 5N, reduction of veteran in exchange for volunteer service property tax.
On the motion, Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo is absent. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, the motion will be forwarded to the full City Council for approval.
Thank you very much. The next calendar item is on the DPW facility loan order. I see Superintendent Goodwin here. Superintendent Goodwin, would you like to address the council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don Goodwin, Superintendent of Public Works.
Before you get started, Superintendent Goodwin, I did go down to the DPW facility, and hopefully all of you have some pictures that I took. I wanted to pass along some photographs for you, if you haven't been down there recently, to see the conditions that currently exist down there. And I'm sure we all know over the years how it's just been failing and, of course, needs to be addressed. I'll tell you right up front, Superintendent, I'm a little bit concerned with the numbers I'm looking at right now, and I know for one, as much as I know we need a new facility, we're going to have more conversation than just voting on this loan order as far as I'm concerned. So, but I think I speak for all of us that we support you and the guys down there, that you definitely need a new facility. I'm a little disappointed that up to now, there's still no trailers down there. I would have thought that there would have been at least a couple of trailers that maybe would have been set up to at least take you out for the administrative portion. But hopefully prior to the next poor weather, we can at least get to that point where we can lease a trailer or two. So with that, Superintendent Goodwin.
Okay, just to give an update on the trailers, we have entered into a contract with a trailer firm. They are presently under construction, and they should be in the city within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. I think everybody knows what the conditions are down there. Things are deteriorating very rapidly there. Now it's just not a hazard to the men, it's also a hazard to the supplies. The building is totally non-state compliant from a code standpoint, from fire, to electrical, plumbing, you name it. We have the two options that were presented in the memo that was sent to me about this is either new or phased in. I think if you look at the bottom line on the phased in numbers, we're looking at a facility that's, if we phase it in over 10 years, it's going to not only be more expensive, and that's if an escalation cost of 4% is actually a real number. And if you look at the total square footage that we're in there, we're talking a reduction of 10,000 square feet, so you're paying less for more. And the other thing is it's basically it's an adequate facility. It's undersized as it is. 57,000 was more the one that they claim we just can't accommodate a 57. So even with the 47,000 square foot facility, we're 10,000 square feet short of what the needs and the purposes are here. So, you know, the existing facility is woefully inadequate to support the current operations. The facility does not meet any of the, like I said, the compliance codes or anything. And it really has become a real safety issue with working in the building, not only from a slip and fall standpoint, but you were there, Dan. I don't want to elaborate on it. It's almost to the point of embarrassment at this point that the guys are allowed to work under those conditions. We are moving forward. Obviously, we're here this evening to discuss the options and what questions I can or may not be able to answer. We do have a consulting firm on the contract with Weston and Sampson, and this has been an ongoing process for the last year and a half.
Thank you very much, Donnie. Members of the committee, anybody wishing to be heard? Councilor Guanasso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's certainly a welcome relief to see at least some activity occurring to help at the DPW site. We have taken care of our school system. We have taken care of our police and fire facilities. The building that's been neglected for many, many years is the DPW. And for what reason, I don't know, but I think the attention given to it now is so well-deserved. And I think that we can no longer wait for the perfect spot. We have to just get into action and get something going as soon as possible. And I know that we're taking on many financial tasks that create a bond indebtedness. But our commercial rate for Moody's is AA. We can't borrow money any better. We can go one step further with AAA. But I think with the AA rating, we can borrow money at a very reasonable rate. We have to take advantage of that because it doesn't, the rating doesn't stay that way too long. little things happen in government, and the rating can change very quickly. So I think we're at an opportunity time now that we have to go forward with this, Mr. Chairman, and we have to act as soon as possible, not hastily, but certainly to drag this out too much longer. I would say within the year, we should have something going for the DPW in a fashion that we could all live with, but yet that's given enough opportunity and time for us to come up with a conscientious plan to provide a facility that the men and women of that department so really need. And we also, in conjunction with that, we also have to put people power in there too. We all know all too well how many times as a counselor that we rely on the services of the DPW. That's a reflection of us. Once a constituent makes a call to us and we can't take care of their needs, then it's a reflection of us. And so we have an opportunity to help both, make the facility happen and increase the capacity of the workload. So, and I think that they're both deserving of our attention, and I think they're deserving of this calendar year. We start a new fiscal year July 1st, and I think come July 1st and next June, we should have a game plan in place for facility and additional workforce to help the DPW to do the job that we ask of, that is required. I saw the hot box the other day going by. It was unbelievable. I was so happy to see it. I don't know how many of our residents out there saw that and what it meant to them. But to someone like myself that's always complaining about potholes and stuff, it's a welcome discovery to see a hot box out there actually working on behalf of its citizens. So let's help and do any little bit we can to make the DPW work well, because we know subconsciously that we ask so many times of their services. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got a question for you, Mr. Chairman. Are we here to vote on which proposal?
For clarification, no, we don't. The next step would be once we settle on what we would like to go forward with, which I don't believe, Superintendent, we're going to get to tonight, to be honest with you. I don't think we're going to decide in a 20-minute meeting if we're going to spend $21 million or $23 million. I just don't. In all honesty, looking at that building that's there now, the existing footprint, I'm not in construction, but the notion of spending $23 million to rebuild that brand new, I can't believe it would cost that much. I'm just a little bit miffed by these numbers, in all honesty. And it's a concrete block building with offices. I can't imagine how that's going to cost the taxpayers $23 million. I'm just not comfortable putting it up for a public hearing and then ultimately a vote to spend that kind of money until I'm convinced that it should cost that much. So, in all honesty, I'm looking to keep this in committee right now until we look at a couple of other things that I've been interested in looking at. But this gives us a chance to at least listen to the needs of what the department needs and learn a little bit more about the situation down there as we know it today. So, but I just think these numbers are way out of line. That and again, that's not anything. Obviously, I'm not saying that as a detriment to the workers down there, to you, Mr. Superintendent. It seems like an awful lot of money for, as I say, if you had to rebuild the salt shed, if you had to rebuild that building as is, I just can't imagine $23 million for that. It's just, it's outrageous to me.
The current facility basically cannot be rebuilt. There are conditions existing there, especially with the slab floor. I mean, they did have a proposal in here to try to, gerrymander work with it, but the only part they were going to be able to save was the garage portion where the repair shop is. And under today's current standards, our trucks don't even fit in that garage. I mean, that garage was built for the telephone company back in the day. I can't get my larger dump trucks in there. I can't get my Vectors in there. I can't get my jet trucks in there. So it's wholly inadequate to accommodate even trying to save a portion of it. I think the problem there is that the floor is sinking. There's been a couple of floors that have been poured there over the years. If you go in there and look at the columns, you people have been in there. The floor is, and now this is the second or third floor, there's roughly 7 inches of concrete that's shown from the pylons that's holding up the building. So the building is, the footing is the only part of the building that's held up over the course of the life of this building, and it's totally fallen apart. My thought on this meeting was not to approve the, going forward with this, but it would be, obviously, if you look at the two options that were before you this evening, it was for a $25 million option, which is a phased-in option over 10 years. That's going to cost you more money, and it's going to actually be 10,000 square feet less. And so now you're back into that mode. It's inadequate in size for the operation of the building. So we're getting right back into that old problem right from the get-go, where it's not large enough to accommodate the operations that are presently taking place there. And even if we build a new one, it's not to the specifications that the feasibility study required us to be almost 10,000 square feet larger than this existing. So my only reason for coming up here this evening was to, propose the first option, which is the new option. And it's like you say, it's a number of $22 million. But it's cheaper, time efficiency, probably could be built in 2.5 years. I'm not saying that, we say tonight we're going to build this in 2.5 years. I'm sure that members of this committee are going to want to sit down with myself and our architects and our engineers to determine how we derived at the cost of putting this building where it is, and move forward from that standpoint.
Superintendent Goodwin, I'm glad you said that, because that, I think, is where I want to go with this. We are committed to absolutely building you a new facility. There's no wavering there. I would agree. I've never been a Band-Aid type of person where you just build it. In fact, I think that you're 100% right. If we're going to build it, let's build it new, let's build it right, let's do it and not have to phase it in over multiple years, a project like this. But those numbers to me are staggering. When you walk in, and I understand maybe the times have changed. There's different things now that public works facilities are implementing and having included. But again, just as somebody who's a layperson walking through that facility as it is, it's one big open space with some offices. Now, you're going to have some different, you're going to need storage areas, you're going to need all this stuff. But, in the aggregate, it's a place for you to store equipment, trucks. The men, for the most part, are on the road. You need offices where yourself and others can work, and a place where you don't need to have an umbrella over your head. I totally understand that. It just seems to me like it was just an awful lot of money. So maybe the next step for this committee is to hear from the people who were involved in putting these proposals together. I don't want to do this, 3 months from now. I want to do it as soon as possible. I'd like something to happen as soon as possible. It's just that I think the numbers that they came up with initially, I have to say I was pretty awestruck when I saw them, and just couldn't imagine that, for what I envision, for what the needs are of the facility, that it would cost that much. So that's all that I'll say about this. I'm the chair. I appreciate you hearing me out, but I think I cut Councilor Patch off, so I'm going to go back to Councilor Patch.
That's quite all right. I agree with your point, but, I just want to state that I know, Donnie, I spoke to you before this meeting, that I'm for the knocking it down and building and getting you guys in there as quick as possible. But where did this figure come from? Or did they have do they have a bidding? Is this,
They put all the construction costs. What people have to understand here is we're under, a state mandate with prevailing wage laws and different things like that. So just the standards that were required for the building trades and things of that nature can add anywhere from 25 to 40% to the total cost of the building, that if somebody went in there, and, we're not just putting up this metal building. I mean, I've even had guys in my own office sit there and say, oh, you can put a building up here for $3 million.
are there plans for this $22 million building? or-
We do have specifications, we do have renditions. I
So-
thought that you people were for, I have them right here, I can actually make copies of them during the week and give them to you. So it's,
So it
It's
must,
just totally
so
neat.
if they're going with this plan, that this figure, it'd have to be put out to bid, correct?
absolutely, yes. This is just the construction cost estimate of everything.
So we don't
Engineering
even,
fees.
we don't even know what it's gonna cost.
Right, and don't forget, there's no land acquisition here as well, which is we're going to build on the present site, so there's no additional funding for land acquisition. If we had to go to another site and go somewhere else, you'd be probably looking at a couple of $1 million or more to accommodate
Right.
a piece of land that would.
Well, you tell the guys, we're with you. We want to get you in there, you're long overdue for a new building, and if we can get, we'll work quickly to try to get this in order, so we can get this started. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other councilors wishing to be heard? Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, everybody knows that I've been hoping for this day to come the last 10 years. I'm very active, being the chairman of Public Works Committee. I think it's important that we make a move on this. Now, I'm wondering if, without approving any loan order, could we maybe, within the committee, approve which approach we want to go? Because we know we don't want to do number 2. We know we don't want a number 3,
right.
and number 2 or 3. Why don't we just say, let the committee discuss and target approach number 1, which is to go for the whole ball of wax all at one time, at approximately $2 million. Now, looking at the proposed facility that I see, is it huge? It's huge, there's no question. I don't know if the mayor had plans to move some other departments down there that work with Public Works and have meetings down there and offices down there, engineering or site plan review, I don't know. But it looks like, there is a second floor of offices there. I know they need space, for their personal hygiene and showers, and, maybe that's on the second floor. I don't know. I didn't get the exact design of what's happening. Maybe the superintendent knows.
There is other paperwork and design that I don't think is included here, how we really broke it out. But, there's a lot of things that back in the day weren't required. Now, there's a lot of mechanical rooms, the guys who, especially in water sewer department, where they're dealing with putting stuff together actually before they even go out. They need a railing system. They're working with backhoes and chains as opposed to having to say, which is a violation of all the OSHA regulations that are out there. So when they're putting this stuff together, they need to have a workshop where they can come in, have a railing system, get the thing up there, and be able to work and put these things together in a safe and proper fashion. There's a lot of detail that I'm sure a layman that doesn't know anything about these buildings. I was taken back by the pricing a little bit myself, but when you sit down and understand, what they're actually putting in there. And this building will be, 50 years or more. We bought the building, 25, 30 years ago for next to nothing.
And it was already old then.
And it was already old then, so it's, and at this point, I think anybody who's been there recently can see that it's quickly deteriorating to the point of, if we don't do something, there's going to be an accident in that building, and,
Mr. Chairman, through you to the superintendent. Donnie, on the easterly side of the main building, there's some property with a lot of debris there. Who owns on the easterly side? Not the Caruso side. the other side.
On the backside.
Yeah.
That's, well, they actually put the apartment buildings over there. I thought at one point we were going to be able to, if you look at the northerly direction as opposed to the easterly direction, we were going to be able to get that. There's about 10 to 15,000 square feet of parking lot that was there. And the original proposal for the apartment building that was developed there, that land was going to be available to the city, and I was actually trying to make a deal with the developer and Bennett, and then they came in. I guess the first proposal didn't go off. It waited about 10 years before they came back with the second proposal, and based on that proposal, the project was larger, and they needed that land for the required
So
parking
that's
requirements.
part of the flats, Rumney
Yeah.
Flats
Yes,
apartments?
it is, correct. And that's an old picture that you see
Yeah,
there,
right,
Iris, so
that's-
that's an old Google map.
Okay, yeah.
There's a developed parking lot to the north of us, and there are 3 apartment buildings to the east.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Any other councilors here wishing to be heard? Council President Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I remember correctly, we had a very lengthy meeting on this last year that we went over every detail of all 3 options. And I thought at that point that the council was enthusiastic to just move forward. I think we all knew, even at that point, that the option to rebuild was not an option, that we had to either move forward with the tiered project or the build out of just a new project. It seems, in my opinion, that the tiered build out is not a good option for our city. I think we should bite the bullet, use the trailers, and build a new facility. It's long overdue. We're understaffed as it is, and we're not going to recruit any more people until they have a facility that they can work and utilize properly. So if it was up to me, I would vote on this tonight and just give them the money to build this project because it's so long overdue. And sitting here is not getting anywhere. I wish we could have voted on it 5 years ago. I'm ready to move forward, and I think it's long, long overdue. And I know if there are any other questions, like I said, we had a very lengthy discussion on this. There's a lot of documentation in regards to the project. I'd like to see it happen. Thank you.
Council Morabito.
Thank you. I concur with my colleague. I think not only if we look at the construction sooner than later, I think we can all agree we want a building soon, not later. Keep in mind, the 10-year phase is a lot more to our city financially. But I don't think that 25.3K is including construction costs. So I think that's just the interest. So I think it's better if we go with the option that's going to get it done as quick as possible. Because the 10-year phase is just including the interest. I don't think that's going to include the inflation of construction costs. And on top of that, as Donnie Goodwin said, it's going to always be a lot more money when a city builds. Look at St. Mary's Park, the snack shed we're looking to build. Everything, someone could just, I talked to so many construction workers, oh yeah, I could build that for a simple shack for $100,000. But when you have to go according to the building trade standards, everything's so much more money. So I concur with my colleague. I think we should do go for the approach that's going to get the building built the quickest. So I'm ready to vote on a figure tonight.
Thank you, Councilor.
Or at least an approach.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having lived in the city my entire life, I've seen us go from Broadway, where the Rite Aid is now. That was not adequate or sufficient for our needs back then. Then we got down to off of Squire Road. We took a building that was a used building. It's had a reduction in its longevity at the time we purchased it. And then you look at what it would cost to build a new building. It costs a lot of money, an awful lot of money. But how much would it cost to build that same building 3 years from now, 5 years from now? There is a tremendous demand out there right now on building products and on labor for building. And that is going to, as long as this demand keeps going on with new construction, those costs are going to escalate
Yes,
and
they are.
keep escalating. And as a result of that escalation, it's going to cost the city more money to do this. And I'm not, with those comments, I'm not taking even into consideration the health and welfare of the people that work at our DPW. They go out on some of the most horrendous conditions, water breaks, sewer breaks, climbing into excavations with mud and slime and God knows what. They deserve that building. They deserve a facility where they can come back after a day's work, take a shower perhaps, change their clothes, all of that. We sat back and we saw a school building program 18 years ago. It was going to cost us, I think the numbers back then were about $9 million for the Paul Revere School. Well, the Paul Revere School was the fourth school built. And how much more did that cost us? Millions of dollars. How much more did it cost us to build the McKinley School? Millions of dollars. The entire school building project back then was about $90 million. And when you looked at the reimbursement rate from the Commonwealth, we were going to spend about $8.5 million. Hey, that wasn't bad when you consider you were going to be able to have all these new schools and have no cost to maintain them for a certain period of time because they're brand new. All you would need would be preventive maintenance. And what do we wind up? Tens of millions of dollars more in cost because we hesitated to do that. So I am 100% in favor of getting this thing done and getting it done ASAP. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'll just say this. Councilor Novoselsky had said, let's at least pick an option. I have no problem picking option number one, but I would like to see the people that were charged with putting together these preliminary figures so that we have a chance, at least the Ways and Means Committee has a chance, to ask questions and have a little more time, maybe to review more extensive documents. You know, just to sit here and say, I'll vote blindly on, you know, $22.5 million without really knowing why we're spending $22.5 million. I think you even said, Superintendent, you were even a little bit taken back when you saw the numbers. I just don't think that I think we're doing the taxpayers a disservice by not doing our due diligence. And if we waited 2 years, 5 years, 10 years too long, I don't think a month or two is going to matter that much if the public knows that we have done our due diligence. I'm just not prepared to vote on $22.5 million like it's just another calendar item tonight. You know, this obviously would have to go to a public hearing anyway, so it's not like it's being delayed that much by asking for the representatives who put from Weston and Sampson to come up and talk about how this number, you know, how they arrived at this number. And then when we all go into a vote, we're all going into a vote on the same page. I'm just not comfortable with the figure. And you know, I mean, they may convince me that that's the right figure and what it has to be. But it just seems to me, you know, you look at the picture, this two-story building. I mean, we have a $500,000 piece of equipment down there right now, through no fault of your own, Superintendent, but there's no one down there that knows how to use that camera truck. So it sits there, and, you know, we're still using subcontracting out to the MWRA. So, I mean, you know, I'd rather see, if we can save a couple of $1 million, I'd rather put it toward manpower and have someone down there that's able to go out. Council Gonasso talked about the hot box. Let's buy a couple more hot boxes. I mean, I think people in general would rather see more potholes being filled if we can save some money, you know, by doing our due diligence. And again, this is not, I'm not trying to be an obstructionist here. I'm not trying to step in the way of a new building being built. I just think that we ought to take a good hard look at before we start authorizing a figure of $23 million. I'll be happy in this committee right now to vote on an approach, whatever the number turns out to be, if we can, again, have Weston and Sampson come up and explain how they got their numbers, and you, maybe prior to that, give us a week so we can look at some of the backup, so when they come up here, we're not just digging into it. If they could give us some of the backup a week or two before, have them up here, explain how they came up with the numbers so we know what we're voting on, and then we'll vote on a number. But I just don't feel comfortable tonight to just pick one and say, throw a dart and say, let's do it. And if it's fair enough with this committee and members that are here tonight, I can agree on option one. I don't want a phased-in approach. I'd rather, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right and let's do it all at once. But let's just make sure that the number that we're looking at, that we're gonna be authorizing, is what we need to authorize. So I don't know if any other councilors have any comments or questions on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I agree. I think that, I'm not looking to push this down the road 6 months, a year, or 2 years.
I'm not either, yeah.
But what I think you make a good point when you say, let's get Weston and Sampson in here. Let's go over the numbers. Let's all ask questions. Let's do maybe a Saturday workshop or something like that.
Perfect.
And at least when we vote on it, we know exactly what we're voting for and what it is for.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would love to see you come out and at least send the mayor a message that we'd like to see them work on approach number one. That's number one. Number two, we can still, so we don't prolong this out even further, we can still call for a public hearing. It's going to come back into committee anyways. At least we're already one step ahead and still determine how much money we're really going to use it. We don't have to go for that $22 million. Just because we have the public hearing on it, we're one step ahead. That can be held off and then make the vote. But now what you're doing is holding off another month. Then you're going to have to wait another month after that to have the public hearing. So, I'd like to try and shorten that time frame and go ahead with the hearing. We don't have to approve it right away. It's only the public hearing. And hear everybody out, and then have our meetings and vote on it. At least we're not going out 4 months. We're only going out 2 months. And come up with a number that way.
My suggestion, Council, and it's only a suggestion, obviously you can do and approach this any way you feel. But if you do order this through a public hearing, in the interim, that we do get Weston and Sampson, because it'll be another month before you have the next public hearing, is maybe we can get them in here 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, go over it. So when you do have that public hearing a month from now, you're educated to all the facts, and you can make the determination based on, real numbers and actual specifications and plans, and how they actually determined that it was going to cost the $22 million plus dollars.
Superintendent, if I could, just not to interrupt you, but I see our Director of Finance here, George Anzoni. George, if we were to order option one to a public hearing, that's going to come with a number, right? We're going to call to a public hearing, right, a loan order for $22.5 million, correct?
That's correct.
At that point, the City Council is going to hear the public hearing,
right,
and we're going to put it in committee. So it'll come back to, I'm assuming, Ways and Means, right?
Right, that's correct.
Okay, so it comes back to Ways and Means. At that point, we can modify this. It doesn't have to be the $22.5 million, right?
It can be modified at any time, right?
Okay,
Before
so
passage,
even,
it can be modified.
so
It
even
doesn't
though
have
if we were to
put out.
take it up
Is that correct,
tonight
City-
and vote
City
it
Clerk?
to a public hearing, the $22.5 million is irrelevant, really. It's just getting it to a public
Let's
hearing
get it
where
to
we
public
can.
hearing.
Okay.
And at that point, and is that correct to the City Clerk? I just want to check on that. Okay. And that is, but that's one of the reasons that what I wanted to state was that, first of all, I think as far as the presentation is concerned, you gave you this presentation, and the presentation in there states, the pros and the cons for option one, option two, option three. I sent out a file the other day, which was too large to print on paper, and on it was the amounts of money that would, if we passed all our borrowings that we're asking for, how it would affect the bonding schedule. I have my own document here. printing these and send these to the council. But if you look at the numbers at the bottom, I never even put the numbers in for 2 or 3, because when I was talking to the financial markets, they thought that they didn't have an opinion on 2, but they thought it was very strange to pass something and be difficult to pass something over a 10-year span on a building. They like to see that a building is completed because you're borrowing on that building. These are general obligations bonds, so being general obligations bonds, you have to have something fixed to back them up, put it simply. And doing in the phase-in schedule wouldn't give them anything to back it up for 10 years. So they're just, it's not something they're comfortable with. We got the authorization, we got the language in order to do that. However, it wasn't something they were enthused with. When I talked to the financial markets, again, were enthused with something going over a 10-year period. And I discussed with them, and I sent them the same numbers that I sent you. As far as the $25 million is concerned, there's a 4% increase each year, construction costs built in. The number 25 to me seems low. We know how much it's changed. Looking further at the amounts of money that we will be spending, the $22 million does fit into our budget, okay? As far as the pros and cons, and one of the biggest pros and one of the worst cons, I guess you could put, is the fact that the city needs 56,000 square feet. We're settling for 47,000 square feet in option 1. And then if we took option 3, which is the option, we're going down to 36,000. So at that point, it's somewhat ridiculous to vote on that. As far as the number on the 22 million, on the presentation that they gave us, and I thought they came to the council and gave a presentation, and what, discussing, did they? Okay. So looking at it, what happened is, you said you weren't on the council at the time. However, what did happen, in looking at it and reviewing what they did, at the end of the $25 million project, you have a far inferior building than if you built it right away, because you're going to end up with something like a plastic covering over, like a wrap on the roof. Whereas if you do it under the 22 million, you will find that the structure itself is more stable. There's not that interim type of building that they had to do, break down, build up, so on and so forth. And those are all costs that have to be put in play. The 22 million was straight construction, bid on the amount that the estimated would be the bid amount that would occur. What was asked for and was received from Weston and Sampson was as it says in the report, was that we needed a building that would handle what the public works, what they found necessary in public works. Weston and Sampson has done a number of these projects throughout the state. I'm not sure if Medford was one of them, but they did a number of these projects, and their estimates are based on, again, based on numbers that they have viewed in the past. Their per square footage is in that amount, and you'll see that. So I think basically what they're going to come up and tell you is the same thing I'm telling you now, is that, which is in this file, what do they do to come up with this money? They took per square footage costs for construction, and based on the type of a construction on option 1, option 2, and option 3, based on that option, they gave us a figure per square footage. The highest per square footage, oddly enough, is the option 3. It was looked at because, and it was requested because at the time, they thought it was going to be much more of a burden on the city finances and maybe it would be a less burden. However, if you look at it, it will be more of a burden. All you do is you're putting it out further. So you're talking about that 10th year, you'll have a bond issue. There's going to be a 30-year bond issue. So you're going to have something from now that you're voting on that will be 40 years out there. So looking at that,
George,
Yeah,
could I just,
but-
I'm sorry, I don't like to interrupt
No, go ahead.
anybody. It's just I'm looking at the clock, and I have till 5:30, and I have two more issues.
Okay.
I think right now, I think we've pretty much, at least as chair of this committee, I don't have a problem ordering option one to a public hearing, as long as I know that those figures can be amended. And
Right.
what I'd like to do, if the city clerk wouldn't mind, is to schedule a meeting with the superintendent, along with representatives from Weston and Sampson, and provide this committee, actually provide the whole city council with the construction documents that they have drawn up, so that we know, where they got their square footage costs and so on and so forth, what the buildings that can actually look like. My apologies to the rest of the council here. I was not here for that presentation, and
I
whenever
understand
that
that.
was, it must have been a while ago,
Okay.
so things, I just would like to see it as a voting member of this
Right.
council and understand what we're voting on.
And
when
I
a
understand
project is
that.
large.
And the other thing too is, do you want it on a Saturday meeting, or do you want it now before council meeting, or when do you want it scheduled? Because I'll have it scheduled as soon as you want.
I mean, I don't have a problem having it on a Saturday, that, like that, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Or if the council, if it's more convenient for the council, we could do it similar to what we did today. We
Right.
could just have one, we can just
During the
have
week?
one meeting, but we'll
Okay.
schedule it at 4 o'clock like we did today, and we'll have it from like 4 to 5:30, or 4,
Right.
And
Okay.
then, at that point, if we're comfortable with
Okay.
numbers, we can bring it out to a vote at that point.
That's fine, that's fine. So I'll have that scheduled.
Okay?
And
So,
we'll talk to the city clerk to get it scheduled, and she'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, I think, I think that would be
Okay.
great. So if you could do that, Madam Clerk, if you could schedule a meeting within the next 30 days, let's say, before, prior to a council meeting, and then they can, you can organize with Weston and Sampson. So if you could take a roll call of the committee, that we will order option one to a public hearing, and we'll report that out tonight.
Ordering option one for the DPW loan order, the amount of $22.5 million to a public hearing. Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Rotundo? Yes. Yes. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, option one will be ordered to a public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much.
May 7th is the next city council meeting. Counselor Rotundo is already scheduled his own subcommittee meeting at 4.
So then we'll do with the subsequent one, the next one.
So
Okay, we're going to move on to the next order of business. I would like to acknowledge councilors that have come in. Councilor George Rotundo has joined us, and Councilor Joanne McKenna has also joined us as well. The next order of business is item number 18-098, a DCR maintenance facility loan order of $11 million. And I see Bob O'Brien here. Bob, would you like to come before the podium and give a brief explanation of what we're looking for, and then I'll open it up to councilors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob O'Brien. I'm Director of Economic Development for the City of Revere, and I will just note something that the Treasurer noted when this presentation was first made to the Council. The Director of Finance, I stand corrected. The $11 million authorization that is being requested here will allow the city to move forward, signing a construction contract to make good on a commitment that really dates back almost 17 years. It is not the amount that will actually be required in the ultimate bond bill. The $11 million is offset at a minimum by $5 million already in the escrow account, as well as proceeds from the sale of an additional parcel, which is another $1 million. Our outside exposure, if any, would be no more than $5 million, and we have petitioned the Speaker to include in the environmental bond bill an authorization that would cover any exposure that we had. We have asked specifically for $6 million, which is more than enough. It is, however, important that we get the authorization now so that we can proceed with the construction under the aegis of the city of Revere. If we don't, it will be done through state permitting process, which will be more expensive and more time-consuming. So the full authorization allows us to proceed with that, but the actual amount of the bond bill will be somewhat less than half and perhaps nothing. So your support would be greatly appreciated and would expedite the process from this point forward.
Thank you very much, Bob. Okay, before I call on councilors, I just want to bring everybody up to speed. For those of you who may not be fully aware, as Bob O'Brien alluded to, this legislation was passed in 1975, amended in 2011. It's Chapter 841 of the Acts of 1975 and Chapter 183 of the Acts of 2011. We have had a really good working relationship with the DCR and the MBTA with regards to Parcel H and the work going on down on Ocean Avenue, the new Wonderland Plaza, the footbridge, and corresponding and associated construction with that. One of the things that the city had set out to do back when this was first being talked about was to take a piece of land from the DCR and relocate it to include bathhouses, which are desperately needed down in that part of the beach where the current maintenance facility is right now for the DCR. So this is really something that the city is obligated to. We are contractually obligated. So I just want you to know that you know, anything short of approving this would be reneging on an agreement that we had made with the DCR. So with that, I'm going to open it up to councilors who may have questions for either Bob or George. I'm sorry, Bob, did you want to?
I would just add one thing. In addition to the contractual obligation that we have, the benefit of this arrangement for the city of Revere is that it returns 9 acres of waterfront property to the property tax rolls of the city of Boston. On this property, we have already to date collected $1.5 million. We will collect another $1.5 million in the next fiscal year, 2.2 beyond that, and 3 beyond that every year for as far as the eye can see. So the benefit to the city financially is really very significant, certainly far in excess of any obligation that we might end up with for the construction of the facility.
Exactly. And as you probably saw in your documentation that you received prior to the meeting, the city really, we have on hand right now in cash close to $5 million to fund the $11 million authorization. So with that, Councilor Ganasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity to meet with the DCR director, and quite a guy he is, and he certainly alluded to the fact that they're willing to work with us and do things with us. And as you stated, Mr. Chairman, very clearly that we did sign into agreement with this. The initial reaction was that, gee, this is ridiculous, and it's, you know, we got to pay for this, but we did enter into an agreement with that. We had a $500 million proposal before us. Portion of this was part of that. And I think to the benefit of the city of Revere, eventually we're going to see this work out to our advantage. And I think that we have an obligation. We have an obligation through agreement, and we cannot renege on it. It's not an option. So I just asked through the chair that we go forward with this evening and vote favorably for it, because we really don't have an option.
Thank you very
Mr.
much,
Chairman.
Councilor. Any other councilors wishing to be heard? Members of the committee or otherwise? Anyone? Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you know, I've been, this being in my ward, this is something that it's going to benefit everybody. Not only the city of Revere, but also the beach. You know, because now we're getting a bathhouse that folks can go to without having to walk to Shirley Ave or going all the way down to Oak Island, you know, at their bathhouse, you know, to utilize something. And I think it's a good spot. Excuse me, the DCR, we're still working with them. We know we already have about $5 or $6 million already in our pockets. We know the new construction that's coming in on Ocean Ave between the mitigation money and the taxes that we're going to get from the new buildings, not only the one that they're building now, the new hotel that's coming in next to the bridge, and even when the maintenance facility moves from their current location across the street, they're building another facility there, another building, which will include some retail, I believe, and some residential. But that's going to be more money to offset. But hopefully, we can come to an agreement with the DCR and have them pump in part of that 5 million spacing up to this 11 million. So I think it's a good deal. I think we should do it and move ahead and make it happen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I intend to support this, and I'll tell you why. As you may recall, you and I used to go to Hampton Beach, and you'd come out of a restaurant at 10 o'clock at night, and you'd see the great job that their maintenance facilities were performing up there, cleaning the beach, raking it every night. Well, you know, right now, we're getting that service down on Revere Beach, whether it's in Ward 2 or Ward 5, all along the boulevard. And I think to do anything to disrupt or discontinue that service that we are getting now, that people come to this beach now compared to what it was 15 years ago, and they marvel at the beach, how clean it is, how well it's maintained, the illumination down there, the sidewalks, the parking, everything is great down there. So that would be the reason. This is something that was agreed upon a long time ago, and this is something that I would support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Before I ask the clerk to call the roll on this, just for clarity, for people that may be interested, whether they're here or watching, we have close to $5 million in an account right now that was really money that we received because of the sale of DCR property. So it wasn't even our property. So money that we have is as a result of them. And now, as Mr. O'Brien alluded to, the utilization of their property, the construction is now generating $1.5 million. We'll go up to, over time, probably $3 million a year. So, I mean, you know, this is, again, beyond contractual. I think it was a really good deal for the city that was made, and so this is just honoring that obligation, and really, at the end of the day, is not really costing the city. You hear the number of 11 million, but that money really is coming back just as a result of the DCR. This is a win for the city, and so although it seems counterintuitive when you're approving a loan order for $11 million, but I would like the clerk to call the roll to approve this legislation and this loan order. On the loan order, yes.
On the DCR maintenance facility loan order in the amount of $11 million, Councilor Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo.
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes, the loan order will be reported out to the full city council for approval.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. And our last item for tonight will be 18-009, a feasibility study for the Point of Pines Fire Station, a loan order in the amount of $50,000 to do that feasibility study. I know Chief Bright isn't here, but he has sent a representative. Would you like to come up and let the council know about what your intentions are? And I'm assuming you'll be able to answer whatever questions that the subcommittee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James Cullen, Senior Deputy Chief of Operations for the Fire Department. And I'll answer any questions that you might have that I can't answer, and anything I can't answer, I'll certainly have the chief get back to you on that. Proposal is to tear down and replace the existing station. The city engineer's here also, and the building is beyond repair. The city engineer and the chief, and I'm sure several of you have walked through there and taken a look at it. It's fallen apart. The facades had water leaking into it for many years, and it wouldn't be cost effective, to put any money into the existing structure. The existing structure is 1,630 square feet. Wouldn't even serve our needs even if it was usable today. The lot is, the existing lot, the entire lot is 15,300 square feet, and we're allowed to build 30% of that lot would be a station, 4,600 square feet footprint. So that's what's proposed.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy. Before I call on councilors, I'm just a little bit confused. So you're saying the building is not salvageable, correct?
Correct.
And so you'd have to raise the building and then build a new station?
Yes.
Do you have enough room to build a station to today's code at that location?
Well, building it we would be allowed 30% of that lot would give us a 4,600 square feet, so. it would
Can
be-
you build
it
a
would-
fire station on 4,600 square feet?
Yes.
You can, and that will give you all the room that you need for a modern-day station on 4,600 square feet, correct?
Yes,
Just so I
and
know.
also would be proposed, as of right now, and looking to the future, if we were ever to put a ladder truck down there, wouldn't fit in that station as it is, but this will be proposed to be 90 feet deep, which would give us more than enough. Modern ladder trucks are roughly 53 feet in length.
Okay, and this feasibility study, what are we actually getting for this feasibility study for the 50,000? Just out of, is this just to put, I mean, these aren't architectural plans for a new, what's the feasibility study for, George?
The feasibility study is for just what it says. It will give us, first off, some of the senior captain, I just want to mention that the fact that part of it, the study is whether or not to keep a portion of the building, keep the building, or add on to the building, or what to do. But that's all part of the feasibility study, or actually knock it down, raise it, and build a new one. So that's what's going to be coming out of the feasibility study. It's also going to be studied to see exactly what are the needs of the fire department down there, and to make certain that whatever is proposed is in accordance with what they need and according to what fire department codes are. And that's what the feasibility study will give you at the end. It's not going to give you, I don't think it's going to give you a set of plans. That may be another step. But I do think that it's going to give you some sort of drawing and a drawing that will show you exactly a design, probably a design of the building and what they plan to do with it. And further, it will give you, but not something that is spec-proof. So that meaning spec-proof, meaning that it's able to take that drawing and put it out to bid. So that'll have to be another step. But that's what the feasibility study will give you.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
so the $50,000 will be for someone to tell us if it's doable? I mean, I'm not getting much more than.
No.
more than that right now.
What he'll be telling us is the best way to go is. He'll give us the options, the same as you got an option with the DPW. So you'll be looking at an option and which way to go. But to get specs on top of that, it's going to be a bit more money, architectural specifications in order to put it out to bid. And usually that's what a feasibility study will give you. And that's usually what it gave you for the schools and any other properties that were built.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to call on members of the committee first, Counselor. Oh, you are on the committee. My apologies. You came in late.
There you go.
Counselor Rotunda.
There we go. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the captain. And again, could you repeat your name? I apologize.
Deputy James Cullen.
Deputy James. So, Deputy, you said that you'd be able to answer the questions that the chief was supposed to, or be able to answer. So, the last time the chief was here, I asked a number of questions regarding, in particular, the amount of trip calls to the Point of Pines, as well as to Riverside versus down on the beach. I wanted specific numbers. I wanted to know what were MVAs versus what were medicals, what were fires. The other thing I want is how many water rescues have we performed within at least a 4-year period, which I did not ask him at that time, because that would give us the idea of relevance for needs for a waterborne rescue. The other thing is because you've just stated what I had thought was going to be an issue, considering that we have well over 5,000 people that will be in high rises, a pump truck will not be the only thing that will handle the issues on the beach, which will consider, many of these
products are now being built out of wood might forego an issue in the future. That's why I was looking to see also by putting a fire station down the beach, not solely at the Point of Pines, but both of them. So you can't put a ladder down the beach, and therefore response time for, God forbid, a fire on the beach at the 5th floor, the 6th floor, the 7th floor would pretty much render you useless unless you can run up the stairs quicker than, you know, Spider-Man. And at that case, looking at what happened down on Central Avenue, God forbid, Murphy's Laws apply, you'd have a big catastrophe. So I'd like to know what's going to happen. I'd like to have some information before I make any decision about anything. And not getting it, it just seems like a resounding, and I'm not pointing out Chief Bright here, but this seems to be an issue with the administration. We ask for information and we don't get it. And I'm getting sick and tired of it. And I don't mean to put my frustration in this conversation with you. This is a frustration blanketly. We are the, how can I say it, the legislative branch of government, and quite frankly, I don't believe that we matter, because if the executive branch isn't listening to us and not responding to our needs, and then I have a subordinate, which is Chief Bright, not providing the information that we asked for, then what am I here for? So I'd like to get some information before I vote on something, in particular something that's happening down on the beach where thousands of lives are going to be at risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Any other counselors? Counselor Morabito?
Sorry.
I'd like to, before you start, Counselor Keefe has just joined us.
Can I speak?
Oh, did you want to respond, Deputy? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry that I don't have those figures for you tonight. I was sent on short notice. Chief Bright had surgery today, so he called me late morning, and so I was unable to get anything like that. But I will pass that on to him.
Again, with all
and
due
we'll work on
respect,
get that for you.
those numbers right there, they should be able to be printable. There should be an Excel form. If I can tell you how many ER visits from people of Revere are at the Mass General over at Cambridge Health Alliance, because the state holds these statistics, the city of Revere should have these statistics blanketly.
No, they are accessible
Thank you.
on our system, Counselor.
Thank you, and
we'll get that
please,
for
I
you.
wish him well, and I hope he gets better. I don't mean to take out my frustration with you. It's not pointed towards you, and I do
No problem.
apologize.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Thank you, Deputy. Counselor Morabito.
Just a quick question. I know we're approaching that 6 o'clock mark. If you can just take note of this, if you, Ms. Danzoni as well, if you can take note of this in the feasibility study, if you can have them include the anticipated inflation of construction costs on the time of the project. Because as we all know, nothing costs what is printed. 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, everything's good. The construction costs are going to elevate, and it's going to change the price of the project. So if they can include that, I'd appreciate that as well.
I'll pass it along.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McKenna.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask you a few questions. First of all, do we really need to spend $50,000 on a feasibility a study where we know that we need a new fire station down there? And I do believe that we need a fire station down in Point of Pines, because right over the bridge is going to be 300 units and more that they're building in Lynn, and I don't know where the nearest fire station is down there. So I do believe that we do need to reconstruct that fire station and open it up. But if we know that it's not doable, then why do we have to spend $50,000 on a feasibility study? Why don't we just put the money towards a new station?
Well, one of the reasons is because you have to do a feasibility study under the Massachusetts general law before you build any building, and have to show a need for it. And we follow the same thing on the MSBA when you do schools. So that's one of the reasons why you do a feasibility study at first. Okay, thank you, Council.
My only negative part of this is it doesn't even include specs or architectural designs or whatever. It's just, do we need a station down there or not? I'm not in agreement with this at all. I just think we should take the $50,000 and put it towards a new station. I understand, George.
Yeah, I know, and Council, maybe I misrepresented what a feasibility study is, or didn't say it clearly enough. It just doesn't only tell you you need a station or not. What it does tell you is the type of station you need. What it does tell you is if you have the land area, if you have the support for that station, there is going to be a schematic drawing, the same as you pretty much had for the DPW building. So you vote the $100,000 for the DPW building, you came up with drawings, you came up with plans, all right? But then the next step is, we're going to have to go out there and get an architect to do the spec-ready plans. So that's the same process that we followed for the DPW building, that we knew we needed a DPW building, that we're following for the fire station. So that's why we're looking at a $50,000 feasibility study for the fire station. It's one of the reasons. And two is what type of design. So that way there you can hash it out. You can hash out, okay, do you need 2 ladder trucks down there? Do you need a pump down there? How many man service would you need down there? All that has to be hashed out. And that's hashed out during a feasibility study. So that's why we're looking, and that's why we have the feasibility study at our option, because again, it's the same thing we've done for every one of our schools. It's the same thing that's been done for every one of our public buildings that we've built, such as DPW, and this is the same thing for this fire station.
One question. So did you do that for the Malden Revere Fire Station? Did you put out $50,000 for feasibility study for that station?
Well, what happened was that came out of, I understand, that came out of an agreement between the developer and the city of Revere and the then mayor. And it also came out of what the city of Malden and the developer. So it's a shared station, as you're aware. So that was a point in time, and since then, Massachusetts general laws have changed.
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Thank you very much, Council McKenna. State your point, please, Council, because then
We can do a study in-house, we don't have to spend that $50,000, period. Study can be done in-house. We have the ability to do that in-house. And that's what was done with the product over in Malden and Revere. And that's coming from Joe Shea's mouth. So we have the ability to do that. The idea is just to have something for the architects to do it. We can do that in-house.
thank you very much, Councilor. Thank you for that point. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A week or two ago, I heard comments about DCR, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, probably paying for a fire station for us down on Ocean Avenue somewhere, which would be further away from the Point of Pines and the high-rises on the boulevard, or most of the high-rises. I don't think that's going to happen. DCR was up here tonight looking for $11 million, I believe, to build a maintenance facility for themselves. So I can't possibly imagine them turning around and saying, well, we need $11 million from you, but we're going to build a brand-new fire station for you. I don't see that happening. What I do see happening is the city of Revere, when Wonderland is developed, making an arrangement with the developer, whoever it might be, just as we did up on Ward 6, to allow for a fire station down there and move Engine 5 out of Freeman Street, which is a very difficult location to get in, as I believe the deputy would agree to that. Alden Mills Fire Station, when it was donated to the city, the property, there was an agreement that would be used specifically for public safety. So you can't do anything else with it, really. Now, when you look at the demographics down there, you look at Beach House, you look at the 145 apartments this council approved, which I didn't vote for, by the way, last week. When you look at that, and then you look at the G&J property, that's not always going to be a tow yard. They're going to maximize the value of that property and sell it down the road and bring a potential developer in there. So you're going to have more need for that station. You look at the Lasden property. That's in court right now. There's 4 or 5 years contesting a developer with regard to the ownership of that property. So that's not always going to be a property. You got the Beach House. You've got Satter House. You've got the Breakers. You've got Seaview Towers. You've got the Atlantica. And a lot of that is wood construction, okay? Now, why do we have 4 or 5 pieces down on the boulevard 40 years ago? Because of the wood construction and the wooden hotels down there and all of the other properties. Okay, there is no, I don't think, as Councilor McKenna alluded to, there's no question in this world that we need a fire station down there. We had a situation within a couple of weeks ago when both simultaneously, the Boulevard and 1A were cut off from getting down there by a fire apparatus or anything else. Deputy, would you tell us how much our call list has increased, please?
Just going on my own career, almost 20 years ago, when I came on the job, we had about 6,000 incidents, calls for service. Last year, we were over 11,000 incidents, so almost double in 20 years, and it's not going to go down. So the Engine 2 station, we talk about in the context of serving the Pines is also to grow the department to serve the city. So it's not so much just the Pines, but this will increase our apparatus and our manpower as going forward. And just an example, I was in the city of Newton last week, and I was on a tour of a new station over there, and we were talking to some of the commanders over there, the senior staff, and they have 180 members, and they answer 9,000 incidents a year. And we're under 100 members at this time. We're working on our manpower right now, and we're over 11,000. So, I mean, I know it's a big city, like a city like Newton's a bigger demographic than Revere, but it just goes to show you what the strain that we're under, and we're trying to grow the department as we go forward to serve the city better.
Well, it sounds like your numbers have dropped over the last couple of years then, if you're under 100 guys. 100
Well,
members.
excuse me. We have several in the academy right now, and the chief's working on bringing the manpower up. Him, along with the mayor, they're working on that. And I believe he's in a grant process right now to try to bring us 4 more members going forward this year. And as far as hiring people, it doesn't just happen that you just hire them, as you know, being a former mayor. It takes quite a bit of time to get them on the rolls, get them trained. And, you know, by the time you bring them on, you already lost 4 people out the back, you know, retirements and everything else.
Thank you very much, Deputy. We're going to have to wrap this up because there's another committee meeting after this, and this should have ended 20 minutes ago.
Mr. Chairman, just for a
if we
point of
could
personal
have some
privilege,
final
just
thoughts.
because...
Just one
Some final
second,
thoughts,
please.
because I think I've been very good.
I had
in letting
final
people-
thoughts, okay?
Final thoughts, please.
Deputy, if there was a major fire in Beachmont or Ward 2, what's responding to that fire?
Beachmont, well, we would have engine 1, ladder 1, engine 4, and engine 5. That's a single alarm response on a
Okay,
report of a fire.
So engine 5 is gone. So there's nothing covering Lower Revere Street, Oak Island, the Point of Pines, or even the Boulevard at that point there. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and wasn't there an incident last week or a week or 2 ago when we called for mutual aid and there were 2 towns or cities that didn't respond?
That was this afternoon, Councilor.
This afternoon, okay. And what were they? Just 2 that would normally respond
Chelsea
to
and
mutual
Everett
aid?
normally come in. They're our
Okay, and
closest.
there have been other incidences like that, too.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, there are times when we've had a blackout on engine 5,
Correct.
okay?
Understood.
Yeah, so
Thank
the point...
you very much,
I
Counselor.
just made,
Point of
I'll sum
personal
it up.
privilege.
If Councilor Rotundo will allow me. The point is, that station is needed down there, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Rotundo, then Counselor Patchen. We really need to wrap this up.
Thank you. Council Powers, if you're going to insinuate, get it right. I wanted the...
I always get it right, Counselor. I got it right 2 weeks ago when I voted against
I thought I had the-
145 units down on the boulevard.
I wish I could have the floor without being interrupted. But that said, knowing full well that we could not put a ladder at the Pine Station, it is why I wanted a station right next to the state police barracks, which is not DCR. And in fact, having that there would be closer to any high-rise that is on the beach. More importantly, it would also help for any apparatus that is down at the Point of Pines. It's that simple. You can have both. You don't have to have just one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Patch, very quickly, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Real quick, for George, for you, George. 50,
He's pointing at me.
we get a $50,000 loan order, right?
Right.
Now, we got to pay interest on this loan.
Yes, you do.
So can I ask, is it possible to take the $50,000 out of free cash? He's got like $6 million in free cash.
You could do that.
Why, does it make more sense to do that and not pay the interest?
Well, I think right now is what happens is the 50,000 becomes part of if you do build a station, it originally becomes a 5-year bond issue. Then when you put it in with the station, it's going to come a 30-year, part of a 30-year bond issue. Again, it's if you want to use free cash out of that, you can. And this decision of the administration whether or not they want to or not, but it's not something the council can appropriate. So it has to be something that comes out of the mayor's office recommending it.
Okay, I just
No,
thought it would be,
I understand.
it'd be
I
cheaper
understand.
to, it's not crumbs like that
Yeah.
famous congresswoman said,
I
but it's a reasonable amount of money, 50,000, but
Right.
it's small
I
enough
understand
that I think it could come out of free cash. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Council.
Thank you very much, Counselor. So we'll wrap this up and ask this to go to a vote. But I just want to say, to echo the sentiments of Councilor McKenna, and I think Councilor Rotundo may have said it, you know, for what we get for $50,000, I think all of us sitting up here are probably in the wrong business, because $50,000 is an awful lot of money to get really nothing, because then we got to go to architectural drawings, then we have to put it out to bid and go to construction costs. So, you know, but again, I understand that it's a process, it is a public project, and we have to conform with that. How we get there is a whole other story, but the one thing I do know is the people in the Point of Pines and along the boulevard definitely need public safety protection. The city is growing, you know, at a rate, of course, I'm not happy with, but it is growing, and these people need to be protected. And that Pines Fire Station has been closed for a long time. To hear from Deputy Cullen that we're under 100 people, notwithstanding the fact that there are some people that are in the academy, is a little bit troubling, because while we have equipment that's currently out of service from time to time, the notion of spending this $50,000, then architectural costs, then construction costs, and not even be sure that we can staff a station down there is a little bit troubling to me. I'd rather know that we have the manpower before we start spending millions and millions of dollars on construction costs for a building. A building is going to do us no good if we can't staff it. So I'd rather know that we have adequate resources, manpower to staff a building before spending those millions of dollars. But that being said, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll on this feasibility study for $50,000.
Shall the Ways and Means Committee forward to the full City Council the approval of the Point of Pines Fire Station Loan Order Feasibility Study in the amount of $50,000? Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, the loan order will be forwarded to the full City Council for approval.
Thank you very
Substitute
much.
motion?
Excuse me, Councilor?
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
A substitute motion?
Yeah.
Well, that,
Or another motion.
do you want to do that now in subcommittee, or you
Quickly,
want to wait
yes.
for the
No,
general
right now.
meeting?
That the city looks for an alternative feasibility in providing in-house a feasibility study for the Point of Pines Fire Station.
Well, I'm just trying to get my...
So if we can do the
So-
feasibility study in-house without having to pay for it underneath Massachusetts general law, I think we should do that. I understand that.
I'm not sure. We
Because George was
just...
telling me that there might be a law that might prevent it, but if there isn't, we vote yes, and then we have that ability to do it that way too.
Counselor, I'm not saying that that might not be feasible. I just
We'll
don't
look into
know
it later,
that
and we'll drop
I just
this
don't
issue.
know that this is the forum. If you want to, when this comes up for a vote tonight, if you want to offer a substitute motion at that point, that might be the time to
I think I'll
offer it
speak
up,
to
I
Paul
think.
Capizzi and see if we can do it another way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Counselor. So that will conclude this Ways and Means Subcommittee. I apologize to Chairman Guanasso for running a little bit over, but we did have a number of items on the agenda, and I see people here waiting for appointments. So with that, I will close this Ways and Means Committee Subcommittee hearing, and I thank you all for your attendance.